I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three Black moms.
This past Tuesday, actually right before my class began, I got a text message or an alert that Queen Elizabeth II, who had been reigning over the UK for 70 years, had just died. The Queen was 96 years old. And it had been reported, quite early, the past couple of days that she had been ill. Her husband died last year at the age of 99. Now, all of my students, most of them journalism students, some of them were aware. And so we did a 30-second moment of silence before proceeding with the rest of the class. And it was only partially out of respect for the Queen and for the monarchy, as it were. Because as we've noticed this past week, Black nations and a lot of the rest of the world that have been colonized and brutalized by England and the UK had a very different reaction to the death of the Queen. Granted, people were saying that she really didn't have power, but for the last 70 years, this woman who began her reign about the age of 25 had enough political power or cachet that there could have been a lot less brutalization and colonization of many of our countries in Mother Africa, as well as in Ireland and in Scotland and other places that England has taken over. Now, people have been saying, yes, but this is out of respect and show some respect. But sisters, I want us to start thinking about, well, should we be mourning this queen? And should we tell the truth? And it kind of goes into that whole thing about rewriting history and romanticizing the monarchy when we have seen firsthand how they treated our American sister, Meghan Markle, and the racism that she has been propagated on her. Even as today, when I looked at an Instagram post that showed people refusing to shake her hand, these white women giving her the side eye when she was going through the list of mourners. And also, it has been brought up a lot about all the brutality that has been suffered throughout the world by the hands of England. So, what do we think about, well, for one thing, Black Twitter was great because and I saw several of them on TikTok where they talked about, they start out with Queen Latifah and then they go up to all of our queens, including Michelle Obama. And they said, no, they're still alive. Well, then who are you talking about?
Ooh.
Because and of course they didn't just say that word, they used another word that I won't say. But
yeah,
what do we think about this whole romanticizing and gnashing of teeth over someone who, one, ruled for 70 years over the colonization of the rest of the world, and two, was 96, so it was not exactly a tragic end.
No, it was not.
I know for me, I feel a little bit removed because, number one, we're not British. We don't speak, with the British accent. As a matter of fact, one of the AARP special movies where you can sit at home and watch documentaries and stories and all kinds of fantastic movies that have not hit the big screen. Eric and I watched a documentary about the Queen, Queen Elizabeth, and it talked about her reign and different aspects of her personal character, the things that she held to because of the kind of culture that England has, how she would hide her feelings about a lot of things. And the documentary tried to make her more into a person to the viewers, because I remember there being a lot of angst at her public response when Princess Diana was killed. And a lot of people say, well, that was because of, you know, this regal stance that she has to adhere to. And maybe in her private bedroom, she cried and cried and cried. We don't know that. And then the attitude with Meghan, you know, that kind of thing never stops. And
Right.
it's so subtle. And I will say, Meghan shared quite frankly on one of Oprah's interviews on how she was treated and why she and her husband decided to leave the monarchy, because she did not want to be under that burden, that scrutiny, that what do you call it? Secret hatred where people slight
Micro,
you.
micro and macro aggressions.
Yeah, and you are dismissed, and people kind of treat you badly, and you pick up on that. She was not going to subject herself under that kind of criticism, and she wasn't going to let her family fall under that either. That's why they left.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and I think if we really look at the whole history of Britain, the monarchy, and all of that, why would we be celebrating
Or mourning.
or why would we be mourning the end of someone's reign, whether they had actual political power or not? We're talking about a vast collection of wealth stolen from other nations and from indigenous peoples from around the world. The British Empire, what was it saying? The sun never sets on the British Empire. Well, there are still places that are under colonial rule today, and if not directly, at least through the banking systems and everything else that we're still being influenced by, we're still feeling the effects of. And this whole mindset, the idea of royalty and British royalty. Yeah, you know, we all grew up with the fairy tales and everything, the princess and the queen and this and that. But let's look at the economics of what this represents, the brutality that this represents, and the history of the struggle of people trying to get free from this structure, and all of that is part of real history. So if we want to make the world better, we have to admit why it's bad in the first place. You know, what really happened, and let's just tell the truth. It's nothing wrong with admitting that things that happened shouldn't have, or were detrimental and were cruel, and this family represents centuries of cruelty. It's just what it is. I mean, you might be able to say that about any rulership, and it could be true. I mean, you know, a few months ago when African kings came here, and one of them said, "Yeah, we apologize for what we did because we had a hand in profiting from slavery, and we need to apologize to the African Americans."
Yes.
So all of those people
Because
who
we're here because of some of what they did.
Mhm.
Yes.
So the right thing to do is to admit all those people who made money off of selling people and killing people and taking people's stuff, and you know,
The
taking
blood diamonds, you
the
know.
blood diamonds, all of that. Let's admit it. It is what it is, for the purpose of correcting it. And that might be hard for people who love that whole fairy tale. Oh, the queen, you know. And I have great respect for Princess Diana for what she tried to do, and really being a humanitarian despite that position that she was in.
Yeah.
And then of course,
Very
like,
awkward. And she was supposed
Yes.
to turn her head when her husband committed adultery several times.
who is now going to be the queen consort.
But that's what's so funny. I mean,
Someone
you
said
know,
something about, oh, the side piece won. So because that's exactly what she was. She
Hey,
they were, and she and
true
Princess
political move.
Diana.
That's what it was.
Princess
I mean,
Diana said that there were 3 people in this marriage. Now, she
mhm.
was she wanted not to marry him, and they said, "Well, you got to now. Your face is already on the tea towels." But before the marriage. But then the thing is I think the woman that he ended up marrying anyway was not supposed to be proper because she was already married, I believe. And
Yeah,
so all of these traditions
just threw that out the
that
window.
they threw all that out the window. It was like, okay, you're gonna marry this nice one, and then just
Side piece one.
well, like I said, Black TikTok and Black Instagram and Black Twitter have kept me entertained for the last week. Some of the things that they have said about this whole thing, uh, because Diana was, and they've had a lot of Diana standing there waiting at the door for the Queen. So when she supposedly gets to heaven. So anybody
Mhm.
who does not follow TikTok or Instagram or something, go on, or Twitter, go on and find some of this stuff, and we'll see how everyone thought of that. But seriously, there was so much, and think about even the genocide in this country from people who came over here and moved the indigenous people off their land and claimed it for England. And the way that we've decided that, oh, well, this is, I mean, where do I live? I live in New England. So,
Mhm.
it's like we, and we use this, well, this is the way it's tradition. Well, the tradition also was that these people married into their own families.
Yeah.
Prince Philip was her cousin.
Mhm. Yeah, all of that. So
And of course, this is royal blood. No, this is the reason why you all
yeah,
don't want to do this, and assuming that someone is better than you. And so you give them your money to rule, allegedly, whatever their royal duties were, which is
a
pretty
lot of
much this.
ceremonial
A
stuff, but
lot of
still,
ceremonial
and,
stuff,
and
I'm
holding
sure,
on to the money because that's
and
what they
holding
do.
on to the money. And then for us to say, oh, the Queen died, and oh, she did this. You know what? At some point, she could have said, we can start, colonizing the rest of the
You
country
can give the
or the
wealth
rest of the
back.
world, and give these people back their power instead of assuming. And that's part of the white supremacist uh, trope, is that whatever you did, we can do it better.
Mhm.
Because African countries had languages, they had their own religions, they had their own monetary system, they had their own agricultural system, they had everything. They were civilized countries, and we grew up thinking, oh, it was Tarzan, another white man, and the rest of these people were savages.
Only
You
in
know what?
those silly cartoons.
All of the, you know what? We were not savages. We were not savages then, and we're not savages now. But
Savage
people
people are the
use
ones who
that.
go and kill.
Yes,
That's
savages are, and the indigenous people in this
And
country,
destroy
they
countries.
they come,
Now,
they destroy, and they root, they rape and plunder.
yeah, that's
And then for
now
us to turn around and say, oh yeah, but she was this and she was that. Maybe she was nice to Megan, maybe she wasn't. We don't know. She said that the Queen was very nice to her, but the rest of them folks weren't. And the rest
no,
of the
because
folks
there
weren't
was a
nice to
lot of
Diana either.
jealousy that was involved in that, and just the family gossip. And
Yes.
I will say, even just speaking about the African civilizations and the colonization that went on in so many of those countries, I am almost done reading Viola Davis's book, Finding Me.
Mm.
And in
Oh, I
one
have to
of
look for
her theater groups that she was a part of before she had become a well-known actress, they traveled to the Gambia
Oh,
or the Gambian. And
Gambia. Gambia.
she just described so intensely the beauty of the culture, all of the musicians, where she said all of the European musicians got their ideas from. She said
Mhm.
every instrument that these people played, there was some form of it in European orchestras, and I was fascinated. Some of the things and the dances and the things that she described so well were just captivating. But it was, and then it was also in her book where she talked about a little bit about the colonization and how that changed so many things, how those things stripped a lot of people of their own dignity and their own feelings of worth. And I don't know, what good things can we say that the queen did do? Because, no one's all bad. We all got that good and that bad. What good things did she do?
Well, she might have done some charitable things, but I mean, you got everybody's money. You should do charitable things.
We've taken all your money and all your riches. Here's some
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, we'll give you a little bit of it back. Aren't I nice? But I think this really is a teachable moment, and not to make everybody feel ashamed or feel guilty because they're of British origin. But let's just tell the truth, and let's just agree that we're not going to treat people this way anymore. Let's just agree that we learned from the past that this was a brutal way, going across the world and killing people and taking their things does not make you great. It makes you savage. And we're not going to do that anymore. And we're going to admit when we did it. And where we can, we're going to give back what we took from people. That would be
reparations. What did James Baldwin say? James Baldwin has said, not every, and I've used it before, not everything that can be changed. Let me see. Not everything that can be faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced.
That's right. So I think this is when things like this happen. Even though, you got people talking about critical race theory teaches racism and blah, blah, blah. Well, let's just teach the truth about history. And let's not glorify mass murder, which is what war is what conquering is. It means you go into a place and you slaughter, you commit a Holocaust, you mass murder people. That's nothing that should be glorified or cause you to be put up on a pedestal as a hero. So we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to make that be something to be admired anymore. And I think maybe her passing is the end of an era of false teachings of history and admiring a system that really is not to be admired. If you go back how many centuries of all the British monarchy and what it stood for, and like you say, people killing for the queen and enslaving for the queen and all of this. Why would we?
Yeah, China just
all those great girl movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is that when I looked at a map of all the places that the United Kingdom came and colonized, there weren't very many places that it wasn't there. There wasn't, like I said, I did not realize growing up. I did not know about Hong Kong and China as being two separate entities until I actually, and it was like, okay, I'm today years old when I understand this, because I always assumed that Hong Kong was a part of China. And I have a friend who grew up in Hong Kong, and she says, no, I also have a UK passport. And of course,
I just learned that right now. Okay.
And that's why there's so much controversy right now. There's fighting between both of them.
Well, because now there was supposed to be 50-year, I think, where the Chinese, which is a communist government, was given back Hong Kong with the proviso that you will still be able to operate as a democracy. And what, of course, China is now doing is like reneging on that.
They changed their mind.
They changed their mind, and they've decided.
We've seen a lot of that, even here.
The same way that they're doing with Taiwan. They want Taiwan back, and so they've decided that no, we're going to make this all part of communist China. But the thing is that Hong Kong belongs to the United Kingdom. And my friend Maggie had her passport was UK. It was not Chinese.
Wow. I see. I had no idea.
Oh, there's so much history that And as Americans,
It was
we know nothing about any place else. We don't know anything about our own country because,
right.
I still have students who are in college thinking that Christopher Columbus discovered America.
That's what they were taught. I mean, they
That's
didn't
what we
start
were
teaching.
taught.
Yeah, it's
We
been
were
like
taught
within the
that
last
40,
5
50
years.
years ago.
Yeah.
And the truth has been out there since then. So that's going to be, that's the thing. So we don't know our own history, and we definitely don't know the history of China, of Hong Kong, of England, of any place in Europe. We're not sure why we were over fighting in Vietnam. There's so much that we don't know. So for us to kind of blindly turn around to bring this back, to kind of blindly turn around and says, "Oh, the queen died and she was this wonderful person and she reigned for 70 years and this was such a
Yeah.
wonderful, she had this beautiful marriage to her cousin." Somebody said a husband. Her, not
Cousin.
mine, not mine,
Oh,
also on Black TikTok. Um, so
I gotta check that out. I
I'll
haven't
tell you, you will go down a
seen
rabbit
any of
hole.
this.
You will go down a rabbit hole. The way I used to do Facebook before I got off Facebook because it was a time suck. TikTok is a
yes.
funnier time suck,
Yeah, yeah. It's like
and
2 hours of
but they have some
time
great stuff on
wasted.
there. If you got lots of time to waste, which apparently we do, all do. Um, so that was the thing, and so we have this romantic. Oh, the queen, the queen, the queen. The queen had enough. Granted, she didn't run parliament or anything, but she had enough to where she could have effected change in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
racism. And instead of like, them addressing what happened, with Megan, they was like, "Oh no, we're not racist."
yeah,
And
just
yeah,
dismiss it.
okay, well that's good enough for me then. You
Yeah,
know, you could have come out and said something, but because they hid behind a lot of the, well, this is the tradition, the stoic, we don't really say anything or we don't really do anything. There
and
were
couldn't
there
let them
were
do it.
side by side stories of how Megan was treated and how Kate was treated. And
Mhm.
you could see the exact same thing if she was wearing something, and when she was pregnant, when she was, no matter what, it was like, oh, Kate can do no wrong. And then it was like, oh, Megan can do no right. And I still see lots of people saying that how much they hate her. I said, and this woman has not been nothing but gracious. For one
Yeah,
thing, she was practically white passing anyway. I knew who she was because
yeah,
I used to watch Suits. I didn't realize she was biracial until uh, uh, they had her with her parents, and her father in this one was black and her mother was white. And then I says, "Oh, okay, so she's biracial." I had no idea. So
mhm,
that's the thing. But the fact is that they made such a big deal out of the fact that she was biracial,
right.
that, oh, asking what color her kid's skin was. Well, she was light skinned enough, and her husband's a ginger. What did you think? But
Yeah.
Well,
the fact
all of
that
that color
all of
obsession
that,
comes out
all
of
of
the
that,
British culture.
yes, yes.
So if we're gonna look at the legacy of England and the Queen and all of that, well, white racism. That's where
Well, and
Well,
it's
I
so,
find this to be a very interesting conversation because I never felt that we, as the United States, were really affected in our modern lives by anything that England did. I mean,
well,
we're allies, but we're not going to war together over anything. We're not under their rule. You
well,
know, we don't ask
I
permission
think,
from each other to do stuff.
well,
We
I
just
think
have
of
that
the
name
World
and we
War
speak
II.
English.
Well,
I think
World War II was, they were an ally, and they've always been allies, in war
like you
situations. But the
say,
thing is that, and a lot of people actually did mourn Princess Diana when she
yeah,
died,
she
Yeah.
and
did
I
things.
because we saw her step out of that royal bubble and be a human being and actually go, even though she was
Actually do
discouraged
something.
from dealing with people with AIDS and
Yeah,
all these other
yeah,
things, she still did it anyway. So those were the things that we mourned because she was a real person, and she cared. And I remember seeing something where she was in this race with her. It was like one of her kids' schooling, and they had the mommy race. And here she is, the princess of England, and she kicks off her shoes and she's running too. And I thought, oh, see, she was a mom.
Able to be a
She was a
person.
mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So we got a comment from Viatis who says, time to end that BS.
yes, it is. It is. And let's stop being fascinated with that whole, oh, the queen, oh, the king, and oh, how Prince Charles, somebody says, oh, he's 73 years old and he finally has to, get a job.
Yes.
You know?
Finally gets to grow up and be a king.
So,
but I think,
but it's fantasy for us United
Yeah,
States. I mean, the closest that we came to even pretending that we had royalty was in the Kennedy administration.
Well, look,
when we were children.
But
think about the idea,
and we
Camelot.
We thought about that as Camelot. The real Camelot came when the Obamas came in, because they actually were a devoted family. They weren't, there wasn't women like being sneaked in and out the back door and all this other kind of stuff that we found out later that we had our Camelot.
But
so, like, we've had our queens.
Yes, we have. I mean, women of dignity and grace and honor. And when you think about the idea of royalty, being a queen, what does that really mean? And that's a word that
was it Nikki Giovanni or one of our poetresses that said, Black women are the only queens in this world.
Because I mean, really, you look at, where did the origin of the idea of royal blood even come from? Isn't that more or less made up? Isn't that something that comes from perhaps families who have conquered other families, which means bloodshed, which means brutality,
or marriage to combine kingdoms so that there would not be war.
Yeah, that happened too. But even again, how does one ascend to the throne? How do you get power? Where does it originate from? And I mean, unless someone is, elected or chosen, or there's some type of democratic process, generally kingdoms come about as a result of bloodshed, warfare, brutality.
And then when they wanted to make it, when they were forming the democracy here, that they wanted to crown George Washington.
They wanted to come and do the same thing.
Because of course this is what
Well, that's all that we knew as a young country.
And they learned from the Native Americans about how to form a democracy, because they saw what the Native Americans did with the Iroquois Nation and the representative government. So Benjamin Franklin went and he actually observed that structure. That's what gave him the idea to bring that back to the Europeans and actually come up with a government that was based on representation and not a monarchy.
And then turn around and kill and then turn around and kill them. So,
I find that to be something that made me stop and think about when we were asking the question about where did that whole thought of kingship come from? Well, really, that goes way back to biblical times, with people being anointed to be king over a nation. And we had the king of Israel, the different kings. Actually, in Bible Study Fellowship this year, we are actually doing the study of the divided kingdom, how one king had all of the Israeli nations, and the other king who broke off only had one. He got Judah, and it was because of the kind of wisdom that he responded to. You had Rehoboam and Jeroboam. Try not to mix these two men up, but the whole thing of an anointing that came from God Almighty, choosing who was going to be a king, and he wanted the people of Israel to recognize him as their king, but they wanted to be like the other nations. They begged for a king. So they picked this really tall, handsome man named Saul, and he was anointed. But then he didn't really obey God. He chose to do what he wanted to do, and the anointing was removed from him. And you have all these chapters spent on him chasing down David when he found out David was going to be the next anointed king, and then chasing him down and trying to kill him. And then even David, who was an anointed king, did really bad stuff, stole some other man's wife and killed him. And this
So
was
my
the same
point,
David
and
that
that's my
killed
point.
Goliath the giant. But that was one of the things that I really love about biblical scripture. They tell the truth about everybody. You don't have a bunch of people who are these heroes who don't have major failings. People that God regarded as men of faith who did really bad stuff, but when they repented and were sorry, they were forgiven. And some people weren't sorry and they weren't forgiven. But all of them
And
were
them folks who were
all
killed, they were
clean.
still dead.
Say
And
again?
They were
all the people that they killed, they were still dead.
Yes,
So
forgiven
even
or
exactly.
not,
repenting
they were
and saying
still
you're
People
dead.
that
sorry
were
has not
scattered
helped.
in all those
And
wars.
the other thing also, we always have rulers who will say, I was appointed by God, and then they flash their sword and say, and if you disagree, I'm cutting off your head.
That
Exactly.
is that's
Exactly.
true even
There's the
today
God
in
in
some
that.
nations.
And
That
we
happens.
still have that. And that was the whole thing of the monarchy and the kings.
Yeah.
That whole line of people, don't you know that they say, oh well, this is God's decree that we be the royal family? That's where that comes from. Somebody deciding God said I'm supposed to rule over you, and my sword says I'm going to rule over
happens.
you,
Yes.
and my
exactly.
cannons say I'm going to rule over you, and my bombs say I'm going to rule over you. So really, real spiritual leadership,
Our
real spiritual
servants.
leadership,
Real spiritual leadership are people who are servants, not evil rulers. You are correct in that.
And people who raise the spiritual awareness of the people and not keep them in fear.
Yeah.
So
or in bondage.
I don't think anybody in the British Parliament or the U.S. Congress or any of these other houses of politics can claim a divine appointment, because I don't see any of them serving. I see them serving themselves and keeping a hold of the money and keeping this system of unfairness going. And that's why we got this world conflict. So if we learn anything from the Queen of England and that whole structure, is that it needs to be based
time
on
for it
what's
to
right.
go. It is
It's
time.
I agree
Do you
with
see
you.
that happening?
It's time
Do
for
you
that.
see that happening? Do you think that
No.
with the new reign that there's going to be a change?
Oh, not from that
Absolutely
structure.
not.
Well,
Absolutely not.
I think that people aren't going to accept the new king because of his background that you just mentioned, and people see the hypocrisy. So the kind of love that
they will.
Princess Diana, he's not going to. Prince Charles is not going to get that, because people are angry at him because of the way he treated her.
Do you think that they still are? Because people were saying that at first, but now people have said, well, people have kind of softened, about that.
Well,
And
I think
and the thing is that what we're still talking about is upholding the legacy of white supremacy.
That's all
And
that
so
is.
that is going to keep going on. I don't think there's going to be a change. We may say it's time for a change, and other people may say it, but there's no real movement toward that. So should we mourn the queen? I say, yeah, we could mourn anybody who died, but let's not pretend like, the queen is dead, long live the king, and all is right with the world, because it still isn't. And those places that were colonized and destroyed, they've still been colonized and destroyed, and those people are still fighting to get their own sovereignty back.
Yes. Yeah. So we need to use this as a teaching opportunity for people to understand the history, even going all the way back to biblical times and beyond. When someone takes power and they claim that they're being kept in power by the power of God, let's ask some questions and follow the money, because that's really what they're
now
holding
you
on
said
to.
it.
Yes.
Well, we've got to go. But we want you all to give us your opinions. This is something that's going to be in the news for a while, because we don't know the all of the financial ties that the royal family has, but this definitely has an impact. And look at the stock market and the banks and everything else, and see what changes as a result of Prince Charles, now King Charles, coming into power. And let's do some research and some homework and understand What is the roots of this system, and how can we uproot it? Because it is time for it to go.
And how is that going to affect us? How does that affect the United States, really?
Or does it?
Or does it? We'll see. Well, make sure you follow us on Facebook and YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, 3 Black Moms. And until next time, I'm Naima.
I'm Cheryl.
I'm Barbara. We are 3 Black Moms. Have a great week. Hi, I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're 3 Black Moms.